So with reference to impact, it's manifold. Unfortunately, it's impacting some to a greater degree than it is others. And the impact is political. Because of the politics, immigration is being impacted, and because of the economy, it's being impacted. So first, starting with, I guess, and I can go on and on about this. Please feel free to cut me off.
Definitely, we want to hear more from you, and that's where people will have a very wider insight. I understand there's a different category of, people who are impacted in this immigration system, whether they are, legal immigrants, like who are work visa holders, or people who are permanent residents as well, and a couple of other things. So definitely, the more you speak, more we benefit.
Right. So one is, of course, the economic impact. So because of that, people in non-immigrant status, like H1s, L1s, they're directly affected because, if they lose their jobs, they could be losing jobs, or they could be laid off or furloughed or benched, as you call it in the IT sector. This could be because either they're not able to perform their work remotely, or because the company is just, unable to pay their wages because of the economic impact. And such people, of course, they're the ones who are affected, the non-immigrants. And there are, of course, people who are out of status who are affected because they're just affected economically because they don't have health care, they don't have access to unemployment, or they don't have access to food stamps, they have access to nothing basically. So with reference to the non-immigrants who are affected, H1s, as I said, are being furloughed. So they don't have a job. So what happens then? What can a H1B holder do to maintain his status? That's right. The biggest question that we should be answering today. And so it depends on, so basically the first thing we should remember is there are some existing laws that can help us. Pre-COVID-19, which can help us in this situation. And the most important law is the 60-day grace period for the H1B holders and the L1s as well. So the 60-day grace period pretty much says that if you were laid off, or even if you quit your job for some reason, you have 60 days to find another job and transfer your H1 or, extend it or whatever it is. So this is really helpful in today's situation, the 60 days grace period. So that's one thing. Then there are other ways that maybe you can keep your job and not get paid. That's another way. So your employer, it's possible if you're sick. So there's something called non-productive status when you're on H1, which means non-working status. You're on a H1, but you're not working. So now the question becomes, why are you not working? Is it because the employer has said you shouldn't work because you're laid off, or is it because you're sick, or you're taking care of a loved one, or you want leave? So if it is in the situation where the employer says that you shouldn't work because I have no work for you, he should be paying you even if you're benched. And if he doesn't pay you, then he has to terminate your services, and then you can use the 60-day grace period. But if you are voluntarily taking leave because you want to take care of your family or health issues or whatever it might be, you can take leave. And your employer doesn't have to pay you, and it doesn't affect your H1B status. That is very important. A lot of people don't know that. You can take leave. It can be unpaid leave.
For how long?
So there is no limit as to how much time you can take, but it has, for example, if you're on maternity leave, you can take 3-4 months of leave. Nobody stop you from doing that. So, but the only thing, Jyotsna, is we have to remember that there should be no other state law which says that the employer is required to pay you, even though you're taking leave. So as long as there isn't, the employer can still keep your job and put you on unpaid leave for the duration that you need. It should be reasonable, of course. If tomorrow the employer is audited and you haven't been to work in 1 year and there's no reason for you not to come to work, then there's something fishy there. So it has to be a reasonable period of time. And every case, it's a case-by-case decision. So if you are sick, you can definitely take unpaid leave. So that's one thing. Then the other thing I was talking about is, other than economic reasons, there are political reasons why immigration is being affected. And that's the latest executive order that everybody is so anxious about, right? So basically what's happening is the present government is trying to move forward its anti-immigration agenda by using COVID-19 as an excuse. That's what's happening right now.
All
And
right.
a lot of people don't know the benefits of immigration, so and they don't know, what's happening. They don't have in-depth knowledge of immigration, so they think, oh yeah, it's a good thing. We don't need people from outside coming in because we don't have
I
jobs
will
ourselves.
come at length over this discussion where the benefits of having these non-immigrant workers here in this country, because
Right.
we really need to educate the masses where this entire people, the segment of people who are venting, their anger saying, oh, they are stealing our jobs. I would definitely want more insight with the facts and figures if you have as how these non-immigrant workers create employment in the country. So we'll talk about that in detail.
That's a huge topic to talk about, and we can talk about it for hours
Absolutely.
and not.
No,
But
but that's, yes.
yeah, so that is something that people have to be aware of, that non-immigrants create jobs. They don't take away your jobs. These are jobs that will otherwise be vacant and will go outside the country. It will
Absolutely.
just move outside the country, so they're benefiting other countries. So you don't have the non-immigrants to pay taxes. You don't have them going to shopping malls. You don't have them buying real estate. You don't have their parents coming, and
Absolutely.
so wherever you see non-immigrants, especially the H-1B holders, the L1s, they only create prosperity around them. You take any example. But what happens is, with any law, there is some misuse of the law, right? There is some instances where maybe US citizens have been displaced. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that the law itself is not wholesome or the law is not good. There are exceptions where the law is misused. But making that stand out and just bring, like for example, that case of Disney, right? Oh my God,
Right.
so much of news coverage, and it goes on and on and on. It happened so many years ago, but
I
still
mean,
they
it
go on
is a
about it.
forever trend right now with the Disney employee,
Right. So
Dom.
that was one isolated incident, and the amount of bad press that got. So that's what I'm saying. You have to balance it out. You have to look at the good and the bad and decide. Then is it a good law or a bad law? So you don't just look at one isolated incident and then you create a mountain out of a molehill and then say that it's bad for the nation, right?
I mean,
So
they
just
have
look at
been
the
lobbying very
statistics.
rigorously against, this H1B community, if you see. And of course, when I come about the topic, you can continue right now. Then I'll ask the question though.
Right. So we're talking about the politics of the situation and how immigrants are affected because of that. And right now, that's what Stephen Muller and the people advising the president are pretty much have an agenda, and they've been trying to implement this agenda in the past, like they did the health insurance thing, and they did taking away asylum, or making it difficult for asylum holders, and they're doing it continuously without an executive order, just by USCIS practice of denying 50% of the cases H1s that are filed, right? So they've been doing this, and they're trying to do more now, using the situation that we have. So what's happened right now is there is an executive order in place that affects, which has a narrow scope, luckily for us right now, but the scope could broaden if it is extended beyond a certain period. Right now it's only for 60 days.
Right.
And just to get into it very quickly, the executive order talks about talks about people who have a pending green card application and who are outside the country. So basically it applies to those who do not as yet have an immigrant visa, who are outside the country, do not yet have an immigrant visa. So those people cannot come in, or their process will be stopped for the next 60 days. So it's limited in scope.
Okay, I will stop you here for once to have some clarification about this. When we speak about people who have not yet applied for their immigration status, for the green card, right, and who are outside, for them it has been halted. What about people who are on the non-immigrant visas here, like L1 and H1Bs? Can they still apply for their green cards right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It only applies to people who are outside the country.
Okay.
And even there, it is limited in scope. Thankfully, they have limited it in the sense that people who have already received an approval and who have already gotten the immigrant visa, they can come in still. It's only people who haven't gotten it as yet, and either their interview is pending, but it doesn't affect anyone right now because the next 60 days the consulates are closed anyway.
Right.
So the consulates are closed. You can't get biometrics. You can't take fingerprints. Nothing is possible for the next 60 days anyway. So And then there's some exceptions with reference to healthcare workers, anyone who can combat COVID-19, basically.
Right. So they're inviting them
Researchers,
still from outside.
researchers, right. So there's some exceptions, and he's of course said lawful permanent residents, people who already have a green card who are outside the country, that's an exception he's carved out. So there are lots of EB5 is another exception. And another important exception is immediate family members. So basically US citizens, spouses, and minor children. They can still apply and they can still come in. So there are a lot of exceptions to this, and then the 60-day rule is also a big limiting factor to this executive order. So right now, it doesn't have much of an effect, but if the 60 days, it goes beyond 60 days, it will have a huge impact on family immigration, as well as for Indians, mostly family immigration. So permanent residents, spouses, or US citizens bringing their parents, these are the impact that we'll have to worry about, our community has to worry about. The next thing, so what does the future hold? I mean, you go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, yes. So now, when we speak about these category of people who are put at halt right now, my major concern right now is for the non-immigrant workers right now here in the country as well. One, if they're outside the country, can they come in as soon as the flights resume to US?
Yes, they can right now, but that's why I wanted to talk about what the future holds or is likely to hold.
Okay.
Because in this executive order, there is also a recommendation that the president is asking the Department of Labor, the USCIS, Department of Homeland Security, DOA, Department of State, everybody to write a report and to research into what the possible future executive orders can be. And he's given them 30 days to do this. Okay. And he wants to know what other categories should be curtailed in order to, so the reason he's given for this executive order is the economy. All he hasn't said, oh, we don't want people coming in because we don't want them spreading the virus. He hasn't given healthcare as a reason. He's given economy as a reason, which is bad, because if it won't hold up in court as well as healthcare would have held up in court. So now what is, so with this recommendation, these recommendations, we don't know what recommendations are going to come out in the next 30 days.
Okay.
But what important to note is, what can a president actually do with an executive order? What are his powers with reference to an executive order? So usually an executive order, his powers are derived from the Immigration and Nationality Act 212F. So basically 212F says that anyone who is outside the country, so basically suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens, either immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of such aliens restrictions that he may deem to be appropriate if he determines that their entry would be detrimental to the US interests. So he has the power under 212F to create to proclaim an executive order to suspend the entry of people coming in, either non-immigrants or immigrants. But he has to show that it is detrimental to US interests, and it has to be narrow in scope. It can't be too broad, then it will not be held up in courts. Like I said, I gave you the example that if someone were to question the legality of the present executive order, it has some things going for it, because he has narrowed the scope of it down by giving a time limit and by carving out certain exceptions.
All right.
But if it were to go to court, I think because the fact that he gave financial reasons, maybe it won't hold up in court as well. Unless he should have given maybe healthcare reasons, that would have held up better in court. So based on this, now if a future executive order has to come through, he can say whatever he wants. He can put in an executive order and say that all H1s are stopped. But then immediately there will be lawsuits filed. And so the question that we have to ask now is, if a new executive order would go to court, what kind of executive order would be upheld? So most probably it would only be an executive order which would be limited in its time period, and which would give most probably health concerns as a reason, and which would most probably talk about arriving aliens rather than people who are already in the country.
Okay, so this is the situation then. Regarding the new, cap visas which are coming up, like the lottery, now they have been picked up, right? And of course, October 1st is the date when they start coming in. So in that case, what do you foresee that they would be stopped if there's any kind of executive order comes, because that will be for the new lot, right? Whether
Right.
it's new L1s or H1Bs, as I said. So this is the category of who will be halted at the entry.
Right. So my take, and we don't know what will actually happen, but my take on the situation is basically, remember, these people are not coming in now. It's for future employment. We're filing
Absolutely.
6 months in advance.
Right.
And they can only come into the country. I mean, no case will get approved by October because there's no premium processing for cap cases. So we're most probably talking about them coming in next year. So as I said, any executive order has to be limited in scope. He has to define a timeline. He has to say 60 days, 90 days. So that's why I'm thinking that the new cap cases, he can't prevent the filing of the cap cases. He can prevent them from coming into the country. But he can't prevent people filing because USCIS is still open.
Right.
And this is for a start date of October.
Right.
So by saying that you can't even file cases now, he's already extending the executive order by 6 months.
Wow. So I have a question.
So no court I don't think any court can uphold an executive order which goes to 6 months in the future.
So as a stand from ILA, you're a member of ILA, what is ILA planning? Because I know there are hundreds and thousands of non-immigrant visas, which are at stake right now. If this kind of executive order, what they're planning with the second one coming in and putting a ban somewhere, it's going to have a heavy impact on the entire industry. People do need technical experts here, the high skilled labor. What is ILA's planning right now on that level?
So you're talking about advocacy.
Advocacy, yeah, whatever you are doing as ILA,
Right. So there's a lot of ILA outreach to the legislation. They're writing a lot of letters, and with reference to the executive order. Also, I think a lot of lawsuits, even with reference to this executive order, even though it's limited in scope, they're already planning lawsuits.
Oh, really? With the current
order, they're
it doesn't restrict much of the people, but still there is a planning for lawsuits.
Correct, yes, because they don't want them. If he gets away with this, then he's going to be he's going to feel bold and then try something else. So they're trying to snip it in the bud. So even this executive order, and remember, this executive order can actually keep families apart, and and we're talking about other nationalities as well, right? It's not just Indian nationals. So absolutely. a lot of other nationalities, they could be EB1s or EB2s, employment-based category 1 and 2, which are current. So that's how they come into the country, through a green card. An employer sponsors them for a green card, and so their jobs are at stake, and and with families. He's effectively stopping all family immigration except for immediate relatives. Except for children and spouses, he stopped of US citizens.
Everybody. So the siblings cannot come. The siblings cannot come in the relationships. Only spouses and kids can come. So parents.
Minor children. Yeah, that's all.
And parents cannot come as well.
No.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that's why it actually has more impact than we think it has, and if it can have a huge impact if it goes beyond 60 days. So once the consulates open and everything opens for business, if they can't come, then they will really feel the impact. And he said he could extend it. So, already we don't know. Most probably it will be extended another 60 days. Because
definitely everything is getting extended, whether it's the lockdown.
Getting extended, right.
Yes, so, the situation isn't improving here as far as the COVID recovery is concerned. The curve hasn't flattened as it was expected.
Right. So I think that in a nutshell is talking about the present executive order and what is the scope for the future one. So I'm thinking it should affect people who come from outside the country. It shouldn't affect people who are already here, extensions, transfers, whatever it might be. But we've been watching the news also, and there have been some reports that it might affect, he might be trying to make some change to OPTs because he's always been after STEM OPTs.
That's a major question right now. The future.
Yeah, and H4EADs, so these two have been in their radar. So we have to see what changes he can make. And as I said, if he tries to make changes to people who are already to immigration status of people who are already in the US, it might get struck down in court because it doesn't make sense. How can you make something retroactive, right? Because these people have already come into the country based on the law that was there when they came in. So let's
I
see.
have a couple of questions. We'll break down these topics now as far as OPT is concerned and H4EAD is concerned, and of course H1B extensions are concerned, and H1 transfers as well. Now, considering the current situation, number one, how safe is it to have a H1 transfer done? And that too, if somebody is trying for H1B transfer, is it fine to join the prospective employer on a receipt notice, considering the situation?
Well, there has been no change in the USCIS processing. In fact, I've noticed that, it's only when it comes to cap cases that they become really strict, and the number of cases that are denied are much higher. But when it comes to transfers and extensions and amendments, usually they've been a little bit more relaxed in their processing when compared to cap cases. So that hasn't changed. I'm still seeing the same trend. I haven't seen any difference in the way they're processing cases. In fact, I've seen some cases which we've received 3-year approvals instead of getting a 1-year approval. Usually, we've been seeing that trend as well, right?
I saw this trend. In fact, you're right. What is happening is currently people are reporting that they're getting long-term extensions during this COVID situation, but people who applied before COVID got extensions for six months as well.
You know why, Jyotsna? That's because of the recent IT serve. There was a recent case filed by IT serve.
Right.
So IT serve, versus Cisna, and because of in that case, basically it was filed in DC, and the judge decided against the USCIS and basically said that they have no business shortening the period of the H1. Wow. The period of the H1 is decided by the legislature, so they have no business changing the law.
Okay.
So he said that and talked about right to control and other things as well. So as a result of that decision, immediately there was no impact. But now I've been seeing, even though the work order, the purchase order, or whatever it is in the IT scenario,
right?
When we're not able to show 3 years of employment, where we're never able to show 3 years of employment.
You cannot if you're consulting for sure.
You can't show 3 years in the future what's going to happen, even if you're not into IT, whatever job you have. Even if you're a lawyer working in a firm, nobody is going to guarantee that they'll have work for 3 years.
Right.
So we've been seeing a lot of extensions for 6 months and 1 year, as you know. But now I've received at least 6 or 7 approvals recently in the last 2 weeks with 3 years of extensions. So there's some good as well going on, hopefully.
Yes, there's always a brighter side somewhere,
A brighter side. But I think what I also wanted to tell the viewers is that don't be afraid to litigate. It's not hard, because especially immigration litigation, it might be cheaper to file a case with federal court than file your extension.
I have a question. In fact, I asked this question to a previous lawyer also who came. If somebody got a lesser time extension previously when they filed before COVID situation happened, and they just got an extension for say around 6 months or 8 months, rather they applied for 3 months, 3 years extension. Is there a scope to go back and litigate again? And
yes,
say, okay, please give us
even
the
if
original.
it happened a year ago, it happened a year ago and it's time to file the extension and you don't want to file the extension.
Right.
What I would say is litigate, because it never goes into trial. So you're not talking about tens and thousands of dollars.
Okay.
So what will happen is you file a motion, and then the USCIS will file a motion, and then the judge gives a decision. So it never goes into trial and then an extended, it's like a summary judgment almost.
Okay, now I will relate this situation to further question, where person was working earlier at client X when he applied for the extension, right? And now his project is ending and he's changing the project, right? And still he wants to utilize this litigation scope to have further extension. I know the project situation is not great right now, of course, it'll be a tough situation to find a job for these non-immigrant workers, considering that there is definitely a preference for people who are here, the permanent residents and US citizens, and it should be as such. That's not a problem. The problem is for them is to maintain their status. And now they want an extension. This situation, when clarity is not there for the next client, and they still want an extension, how do you suggest should be done?
Yeah, so you have to file with USCIS first. You can't go to court directly.
Right.
And if USCIS denies it unlawfully, then that's when you go to court.
Okay.
So if, for example, you have a PO for 3 months and they're only, I've seen extensions for 1 day,
Yes,
for 1
you're
month.
right.
Oh my God, it's just ridiculous.
It so happened last year. It was miserable and people really
Right,
suffered a lot.
right. So I think this lawsuit is really, one bright spot. Uh, the thing is to make use of it, to make use of that lawsuit and to keep quoting it. And if USCIS doesn't listen, then uh, file. I mean, what you can do also is gather all your cases. If you're an employer, gather all your cases together and file one lawsuit instead
Okay.
of filing extensions for each person.
I mean, they don't have to show the client requisition, then the PO and all them. They'll just simply say it
No.
was earlier filed and just
Based on the
extend it.
previous paperwork,
Uh-huh.
3 years should have been granted. That's the only thing that they will
Excellent.
say.
I mean, this will be a great thing in that case, because it will
Yeah.
save a lot of headache for the organizations as well. I mean, everybody is getting extension. They are due for their extensions now. A lot of people.
Right. And with the COVID situation, the same thing. Your projects will get shorter and shorter. So,
Absolutely.
to overcome, whatever disadvantage you have through COVID, I think, again, another way of doing it is through litigation.
All right. And during this situation about H1 transfer, you are saying that it is okay to go for H1 transfer because pretty much
Yes,
you face
absolutely.
is
I'm
nice.
not seeing any difference in the processing, the way they're processing cases.
Now, I have a question regarding, okay, I am probably having a caller. 1 second, I'll see if this caller is, hello? Hello? Yeah, may I know your name? What, can you be louder, please? Okay, Mahi, yes, Mahi. Please ask your question. You are right now live on the show. You can ask the question with the attorney now. Attorney Prashanti Reddy will respond back to your question.
Oh, okay. So I don't have any question. I just called to hear the actual conference.
So Mahi, you can always, okay, to all my audience and everybody, you can also watch us on Facebook Live as well. Rather than only hearing us on phone. So the live, the Mana TV has a Facebook page. You can always go there, even the Mana TV YouTube link, and as well as on YUPP TV, you can watch us live, or you can just simply log into www.manatv.net. Okay, you can tell it to your friends also, if that be the case. All right, thank you. All right, people are interested to listen. We have Mana TV has a very wide platform, and of course we are live on TV5 as well right now. So of course a very wide outreach, and we try our maximum to reach out to people and educate, en masse. So Prashanti, thank you so much for all those wonderful inputs. You come very heavily laden, with all the information. Now, I want to ask you one more thing with this trend of, of course, the flights were all stopped, nobody was flying in. Do you have any inputs right now that if flights have resumed coming to US? I know you are the counsel, for New York, Indian Embassy in New York as well. And from that perspective, I want you to throw some light about if people are now coming in from India, of course, it's been a long wait for them. They're stuck in India. They have to come back here. Do you have any information about that?
So what the Indian Consulate does is the reverse, actually. It will help people who are here go back to India. So that's what, that's the within what they can do. They can't do the reverse because the United States has to give permission, right? So what they're doing with reference to that is they have actually, they have a form which you can fill out, and they have scheduled in the next 2 weeks to about a month or 2 months. They have several flights taking off from Chicago, all the big cities, New York,
okay,
and then the West Coast. So, and they're prioritizing people who can leave. So there are a lot of students, as you know, Jyotsna, stuck here.
Absolutely.
Summer is starting, and their dorms, they have to, vacate their dorms, and they don't have place. And some people have left, and some people were not able to because their university shut down much later. Right. And they, went into online learning later, and so they didn't have an opportunity to leave. And also parents, as you know, of people on visitors visa whose status is expiring or has expired, and they can't leave. So that's another huge problem that, our people are facing, a lot of parents. So yes, the Indian consulate has several flights now, emergency flights, but you do have to go to their website, and there's a form that you have to fill out. There's a requisition form.
Okay.
And I think they're giving a priority to elderly first, and then I think the next priority is students. So yeah, please fill out that form if you're interested in, leaving the country.
Valuable information.
I think by next week, or the first flight is a week later or something like that.
Oh, the first flight goes after a week from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, of course, my question was a little on the other side, asking if people can come into USA now with
Right.
stuck, of
so,
course.
Right, George. So to answer that question, basically, we're having issues with people. Of course, there's so many issues, right, with people not being able to come in. Permanent residence is a biggest issue because they'll lose their green cards.
Oh, wow.
Because you cannot be out of the country for more than a year. If you're out of the country for more than a year, then you automatically lose your green card. And they didn't plan to stay out for that long. So
absolutely,
there's a way that you can stay out of the country for more than a year and not lose your green card by filing a particular form.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do that before you leave.
Okay, now it was not the situation.
Right, so they didn't know. So they did
happen.
not file that form. They did not take the precautions that they needed to. And now they're stuck outside the country and they can't come back in because of the flights. So in that situation, USCIS has made some concessions. Okay. So I think we didn't talk about that part, but I think that's another important thing.
We have to ask a lot of things because yes, everything inside USA.
There's not enough time.
No, I know. I mean, see, there are situations where, of course, there are non-immigrant people also. I have heard the cases where H4 dependents, okay, who went to India for some reason or other reason, they were held back at the airports in India itself, saying you cannot go to US because you are just a dependent visa. You're a non-immigrant. I mean, you're a dependent to a non-immigrant, and you're not required there in the country. So they're right now preferring the only US citizens and green card holder permanent residents. So you don't have to go. There have been many cases of such H4 visa holders who are stuck in India right now.
Right.
And of course, everybody wants to reunite with their family, you know.
Right. So yeah, that, as you said, H4s, and as I was talking about permanent residents not being able to come in, but there's some concessions that USCIS has made with reference to permanent residents. They're saying that you apply for the you apply for it now, return resident permit, that's what it's called. Apply for it, get a receipt, and even though you can't go for biometrics and even though you're out of the country, just show us the receipt. And like, for example, JFK, Officer Russo, who is CBP head at JFK, has said that he will allow permanent residents back in, even beyond the 1 year period. And many airports are doing that. So as long as you're prudent and you don't stay another 6 months after the flights have started, then you're fine. You know, take action as soon as you're able to, then, you know, I think permanent residents, because that's a huge thing for permanent residents to lose their status. Yeah, so
it takes years to get a green card, and of course,
it's so hard. Exactly, and then if you lose it, that's a huge, you know, that's like, yeah, it's a huge problem. And then the same thing is happening with the non-immigrants, as you said. You said about the H4s. There are even H1s who are stuck outside the country and have lost their jobs, pretty much. So they're not on a H1 anymore because they can't come in on that H1.
Absolutely.
So they'll have to now file for a new H1, get a new project, which is hard. And again, we're talking about H1 in the IT scope because 80% of the H1s are used by IT companies.
Right.
But they'll have to get a new project and they can't interview. There are all these logistics problems. They can't
interview. I'll come back
outside
to more
the country.
Questions on that. Prashanti, I'm getting one call right now. Let me see who's calling. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Looks like there is some phone lines. You know, when we work remote, when there is a remote studio setup, there could be a glitch. But well, I have a lot of questions. You know, I think they would suffice the queries that they are having there in mind. So
also, Jyotsna, if you don't mind, whenever we have a chance, there's certain things that USCIS has done to help non-immigrants in this time, and I wanted to go through those points as well.
I would want everything in detail. The only thing, the concern right now is for people who are non-immigrants as well, who are outside India, and of course they went out and they lost projects. As you know, the nature of projects here in the US, you know, if you are away from a project, people who are consulting at third stage, you know, there are you know, prime vendors included and all. And of course, if you lose a project, and supposedly they have also got their I-140s approved, you know. I mean, they are cap exempt right now. What is the situation with them? If they lose a project, they lose their H-1B, you are saying that's one, right?
Yeah. So pretty much it's as if they're not on H-1B, even though they have an I-140. What's the point if you can't come into the country?
Absolutely. So would
Because
this
an
be possible?
I-140 would have a priority date, which is 20 years from now. So that's not going to be
100 years to correct.
And you know that better than anyone else.
So now my question is, if somebody loses the status, of course, and it's cap exempt, and then person finds another project and another employer, can the person come back in then?
Yes. So they'll have to file a H-1 consular processing.
Okay.
And they'll have to wait for the visas, the consulates to open up, get a visa, and come in on a fresh H-1.
And that's a fresh H-1 by another employer. The same employer cannot file the same H-1, right?
No, the same employer can file as well. Anyone can file.
Oh, is that
outside the country? Since you're outside the country, it's called a consulate H-1.
Okay, so same employer can file your H-1 again.
Yes.
In case you lose the job, and of course the situation happens. Or it's like a new H-1 only, because like not new H-1, but it's new H-1 which is cap exempt.
Yes, correct. You're right.
Basically. Oh, nice. It's a great insight there, because people don't know. See, a lot of fear is there, you know. People are not willing to leave this country. And if they're stuck outside, I mean, there was a person who called me a few days back and said, Jyotsna, I have my wife and, you know, the US citizen daughter, and I'm on H-1B, and my visa expires on June 2020, which is coming. And I'm stuck in India right now. What do you suggest? I said, what do I suggest? Fly ASAP as soon as the first flight comes. So he said, can I keep my wife back and daughter back, considering the health situation is not great if they stay back? And I said, okay, only a legal expert can answer there, because I believe you should as such come back as a family, because H4 might be in trouble later on if the visa expires and all those filing happens.
So that's a good question, actually. So the child and the mother are in the US, right, on a H4?
No, they're also in India only.
Oh, they're in India.
Everybody's in India. They got stuck. They went there for some family emergency, and they are there for last 3 months now, 4 months.
Right. Obviously, they can't. Anyway, no one can come in right now because there are no flights.
So
but once the flights open up, the question is, can the dependents come in without the primary spouse coming in, is the question, right?
Yes, yes. So, either they come back together. No, my question is equally that if the primary spouse is there as well, and then is it fine? Then I think they will be easily entering the country.
Yeah, then it's fine.
But if they're without a spouse, then it could be a tension, right?
It could be questionable. I mean, see, but there's one thing that we have to remember. Just because the person who was the primary spouse either is getting an extension or is outside the country for a few months, doesn't mean that the H4 loses their status. No, because it's only temporary. It's only temporary. But if the principal lost their H1 status, which in this case they would, or if they're between jobs while they're in the country, right? Or there's a 60 days grace period, it's not like the H4 loses their status immediately, right? But being out of the country is a different story, because there's more scrutiny. So then when they're trying to come back at the port of entry, they'll be like, okay, so where's your husband? And then they might be like, okay, does he still have a H1, or is he on vacation? Or, so, you know, that's a question.
Right. I mean, that is where it is, you know, people are stuck now. The dependents are there as well with them, you know, and moreover, the person who called me was asking that the US, he got a letter from the embassy saying, okay, we are resuming our flights from Sunday. That is today. Okay. So that's one information I got through him, that he's flying today. Apparently, that's what he was saying, that I'll be flying on Sunday. I'm able to book my ticket. Air India is helping us out, and that's what they booked and all. And the situation is, they have a clause somewhere, Air India wrote, that you should have a valid visa for 1 year. And he said, my visa expires in June 2020. Now, I was not even expecting this, and we never filed the extension even. My company did not file the extension, which was not, you know, nobody was prepared for this situation, right? In that situation, he was stuck and he was held up, you know, like, will they let me in or not?
Right. So that's weird. I mean, Air India cannot make up rules that don't exist. If there's no such rule in immigration law, that you have to have a visa valid for 1 year before you're
Maybe
allowed
they
into
might
the
have some
country.
instructions, it's not their law or something. They
Right,
might
right.
be
So
following the
maybe,
protocol.
this is what we have to remember. At the port of entry, so CBP has the authority uh, to stop anyone for any reason,
Okay.
right? That is their discretion. That's their privilege. They
Right.
can stop anyone from coming into their country as they please. Even if they don't have a reason, they can stop because there's no appeal process.
Yes.
Over CBP decisions, right? The only thing you can say is, I want to go before an immigration judge. And even then, it's up to them whether they'll allow you to go before an immigration judge or they'll just send you back in the next flight, right? So, I mean, final discretion is theirs whether they allow you into the country or not. But there is no such law that, that you have to have a valid visa for 1 year before you enter. Maybe it's just something that they're doing now with reference to.
Maybe they might be having a generic thing, so that people have everything in place and then they will let them in,
Right.
the flight. So that was a live, situation that happened a couple of days back, and I was in touch with them. And I said, yes, I will definitely have those answers from Prashanti because we are going to have a show. Thank you. So Prashanti, yes, one-on-one with the situation that you wanted to enlist about these different categories, now guide us.
So basically, there are lots of things USCIS has done to alleviate the situation now because of COVID-19. One thing is they have extended the deadlines. So, everything that you file with USCIS has a deadline. If you get an RFE, there's a deadline.
Right.
So they've extended that deadline by 60 days. Because they know people are working remotely, or, people can't contact each other. It's difficult to get documents. So they've extended motion to reopens, appeals, notice of intent to deny, notice of intent to revoke, anything that has a deadline. RFEs, they've extended that by 60 days. So that's great. The other thing is the E-Verify. E-Verify usually is a very strict process, which has to be done within a certain period of time. They've extended the deadline for that as well. Then they've also, the one thing that they've done, which is bad, which doesn't help, is they've, of course, suspended premium processing.
Yes.
I-140, I-129s, everything is suspended. And that's a huge problem for people who 6 years on H1 are getting over.
Absolutely.
That's a bad thing that they've done. They haven't helped there. They're allowing signatures to be submitted via photocopy. So they're usually, when you file a H1, you have to file it with an original signature and you have to mail it into them. They're allowing photocopy of signatures. So that's, just to improve the logistics of things so that people can continue filing. So that's one thing they're doing. That also applies to I-20s. I-20 requires an original signature of the student and the DSO, which is the designated student officer, as well as USCIS. So everything they've made it into, they've basically said that copies of all those signatures will be allowed, and I-20 will still be considered to be an original I-20. Then with reference to I-9s, an I-9 is where you have to verify your employee. Right. And the employee has to be actually physically in front of you, and you have to see their original documents, whether it's an original H1 or the green card or whatever it might be. Even in that, they have given lenience, and they're saying via Zoom or whatever video conferencing, you can verify that. They don't have to be in front of you.
And that's very nice.
Yeah. The other thing they have done, Labor Department has done the same things, extended deadlines. Now, when we file a labor cert, there's a deadline for everything, for when the advertisement is expiring, when the prevailing wage is expiring. Everything has to be done within certain parameters. They've extended deadlines for all that. Filing of the labor certs. Also, earlier when we filed an I-140, you had to file it with the original labor cert. Now they're saying photocopies are fine. In fact, they're not even issuing original labor certs. They're issuing approvals via email. And so that photocopy can be used as an original. So we don't have to worry about, getting the blue sheet and then sending it for signatures and getting all the parties to sign. You don't have to send the original. You can just send an email of the photocopy and then get them to sign. So it makes it somewhat
very nice,
easier. The bad thing we know is all visa services, all consulates are closed. So all visa services are shut down except for emergency visas only. They're operating on a very minimum staff. And if anyone has an emergency, a health emergency, or They haven't said what's an emergency, but I would presume it's like a life and death situation.
Right.
You can contact via the website. You can apply for an emergency visa. That's still open. Yeah, so pretty much I think I've already talked about permanent residence.
We have missed out.
The other quick thing, Jyotsna, before I forget, is those who have filed already paid the visa fees. They don't have to pay it again. That visa fees is good for a year.
Okay.
So as soon as everything opens up, you can use the same receipt and then apply for a visa again.
Okay, they can go to the consular process. I mean,
any other consulate as well. All
yes.
The consulates will honor those fees.
And now with the H4 EADs, biometrics are a must for the H4s, right?
It's a huge problem. Yeah.
That is a major issue right now, and I want you to throw light there. Is there any hope that biometrics they might waive off for some time or not? I don't know really. You need to answer.
Yeah, it is a huge problem, biometrics and H4s. And the problem is that their H4 EADs are getting expired, and then they just have to stop working.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, they haven't come up with any concessions with reference to that. I wish they would say that you can work while your H4 is pending, like a H1 can work, but they haven't come up, unfortunately, with any concessions.
Right.
Reference to H4 EAD processing.
So this means if biometrics
the only thing, Jyotsna, what they're doing is that if it's a H4 extension, they have said that we will use the previous biometrics.
Only if they have given. Now there are people who never gave biometrics because it's all started
if it's a first time, then that's a problem.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll be stuck for a long time.
Yes.
Wow, this is really miserable there for them.
Yeah, it's only for extensions that they don't have to at least worry about biometrics. They'll use the existing ones.
Perfect. All the information you've given in a very nice manner, completely compiled it. Thank you so much. It's whether it's like your perspective of the employers as well as the employees, you've covered both. And about one more thing. Now, as you said, the employer can fire an employee who's on H1B even now.
Correct.
I have a question. Most of the employers got this benefit of PPEs.
Correct.
From the government. This grant has come. Now, how do you see it that, 2 months is 2.5 months of PPE they've got, right? For each employee, right? Kind of, if you equate it. So if some employee is not having work, like he's not on a project or something, and employer says, okay, I want to fire you now. Is there any respite they can get? They can reach out and request, see, you have already taken a PPE, please at least keep me for 2.5 months, don't cut my salary.
For those people, they'll have to repay back the loan, remember. The PPP is only good as long as you don't let your staff fall. You have to maintain the same staff as you did pre-COVID, right? And you have to show that you use those funds to pay your staff. So if you show that your staff has been drastically cut down by 50% or whatever, then you just have to repay that entire loan. So I think no one will want to do that.
So nobody.
But, there's some things that can be done for employers. Some ideas within what the existing immigration laws, whereby they don't have to terminate maybe.
Right.
Maybe employers don't think of this, but so I think we should talk about that as well. So
right.
Basically, you can change it to part-time. Remember.
Okay. Right.
File part-time, even if it's 5 hours or 10 hours or whatever it is.
So they have to file the labor
part-time.
Again?
Sorry?
They have to file their labor application again, whatever the wages.
Yeah, it's an amended petition.
Amended petition.
So file an amendment. You don't have to wait for the approval, and you don't care about the approval.
Okay.
The only thing is filing it. So because the moment you file it and when it reaches them, at that time you can start their part-time payroll.
Very nice.
And you can even withdraw it in the next 60 days. Anyway, it's not going to be approved for the next 60 days, right? So
right.
And so you just withdraw it and then go back to normal. You have your H1 already. That's not affected.
Okay. So why this question came, we have to safeguard them somewhere. And there have been rumors saying that 200,000 H1Bs will go back to India. This is what is being foreseen, considering the market situation here. And if they foresee it like this, somewhere or other, they should be saved You know, they have been here in this country for many years. Most of them have I-140s approved. 600,000 of them have, you know, those are the numbers who are I-140 approved now. And nobody would like to move out their kids who are in high school or middle school, you know, and go in the middle of this misery to India. And they've spent their life here. So there are ways we need, you know, guidance from lawyers like you, attorneys like you, who can give right insight to the employers as well as employees, so that they are intact, they're keeping here.
Definitely there are ways. Another way is, even if you have passed that 60-day grace period which you have, change your status to a B2 after that.
Okay.
Change your status to a B2 and then move back to a H1 once, you know, you get a job again. Or change to an F1. Or change to an F1 and then move back, you know, to a H1.
Would they not question?
So the problem is, if you have an I-140 approved, it's an immigrant petition.
Okay.
And so changing to a visitor's visa or an F1, remember for those two categories, there's an intent to immigrate problem, which means you cannot have dual intent, unlike the H1 and the L1. Right. So you cannot have a green card filed and be on those statuses. But I mean, since again, we're not looking for approval here, we're looking for a bridge, right? It's not like he wants to be a visitor. The person wants to be on a visitor's visa.
Absolutely.
Again, that takes 6+ months just to get a visitor's visa. You're only looking to file, create a bridge, and then, you know, again, file a change of status to H1. Another way of doing it is, I mean, these are all things that we don't usually do.
I understand.
In exceptional circumstances, call for exceptional measures. So that's what it is.
Absolutely.
Then the other thing that can be done is, if the employer is not paying, you know, for the next 2 months, maybe they can make that up by having a confirmed bonus.
All right.
So, so that at the end of the year, the W-2 will show, you know, the prevailing wage, the salary as per the LCA.
Mm-hmm.
So that's possible as well, as long as it's a confirmed and not a speculative bonus.
Very nice. These are wonderful insights from you, Prashanti. In fact, I think pretty much we covered so many questions. We didn't need any, calls for that, basically, because you gave such a wide prospect of every angle, you know, as far as this COVID is there, you know, and it has summarized, you have summarized everything in a nice manner, you know. I was having questions with me, but I think you covered everything. But yes, we will come back on a lot of discussions, you know, where we will open up topic by topic with OPTs, with H4s and H1Bs, you know, and then again in our next series, you know, where we will have to have more answers, you know, from you and guidance that this situation is temporary, but then still it will have a long-lasting impact on many lives.
Right.
And the whole things have changed. The work culture has changed. And the last question before, you know, we close this discussion today would be about this situation of work from home. Now, amendments need to be filed, you know, when you are working from home for a longer duration. And I don't think they're going to open up very soon, that people will start going to offices as usual, as normal as it was. And it might be another few months from now. They're already here for the last 2 months, you know. So what is your take on that?
So basically, remember, if they're working within the same MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, or within the same county, to put it in simpler words, you know, you don't need to file an amendment. You can just you can just post the LCA on your refrigerator at home and then, and then work from home, right? So you don't need to file an amendment. And most people do live, you know, close to where they work. Most people do, within commuting distance.
I mean, some people don't as well. So
some people don't. So in that situation where they don't, maybe they live in a different county, then they have to file amended petitions, as you said, after 30 days. For 30 days, they're allowed to work without an amended petition. After that, they should. But it's not a big deal to file an amended petition, because remember, you're not looking for an approval. You don't care whether it gets approved or not. But you just care about, you only have to file it. And then you can start working on, you know. So it's not a hard thing to do.
Thanks for those inputs, Prashanti. But I foresee the trend will change. It will be work from home, most of the places now. So would it be like a situation then people will have to post LCA as per their home addresses?
Yes. So even now we do. I mean, there are a lot of people who work from home. I mean, not now, but pre-COVID-19, there were a lot of people who worked remotely or work from home. And that process has always been there, and USCIS is aware of that people work from home. And so there is a law in place for that, and there is a process in place. So it might just become more rampant, as you said. There are a lot, as you said, yeah, even I was reading in the news that a lot of companies might change the way they work, and because then they save on real estate, right? They save on office space.
Absolutely.
They save
A
on
lot of
so many
changes will
things.
come.
I think more so the TCS has said that they're going to make people work from home, right? There was a news article about it.
I mean, yes, there are many companies eyeing on, and many big clients. I have heard some clients who are saying for the whole year they're just going to stay put at home. All the resources, only mission critical people,
Which might make sense, Jyotsna, because why, if they're able to do the same work from home, why expose them to, and commuting and going to work?
Absolutely, everybody would be at risk
They should
somewhere.
just,
But yes,
if they can, or just stagger them. Nothing to do with immigration, but my concern is more with the schools, how they're going to do it.
schools
Because everything is related, right? If you have to go to work, then your children have to go to school.
Absolutely.
Where do you leave your children? So everything is all related. Opening up is, one thing after the other. Each thing is related to the other.
Nice. Thank you so much. A lot of wonderful insights you have given, Prashanti. Pretty much a very informative session today. And yes, before you leave, as an attorney who's representing, you're a member of ILA also, I want you to throw light with some statistics if you have. When one H-1B comes to this country, a non-immigrant comes to this country, what kind of employment is generated because of them? How much money worth do they have, in terms of investment in this country in one way or other, whether they spend it or what, and how people gain, the US population gains? Throw that light before
right. We already talked about that briefly, but
briefly, yes, at length.
There's a huge. Just look at the statistics, right, Jyotsna? Look at the top companies, their CEOs. How many of them are South Asian? And they're first generation, meaning they've come on a H1 and then converted to a green card or whatever. There's so many. You can name hundreds of companies where the CEOs are, directly from, South Asia or from India, who have come on H1s.
Right.
It's just mind-boggling how many of them are there. I was on another show and they had a list and they were reading out the list. It was endless. So there is no doubt that, work visas, H1Bs, help the economy. I'll give you another example. Look at where all the non-immigrants are. Look at how real estate has gone up there, wherever they are. Look at New Jersey, how real estate went up in New Jersey and it became almost unaffordable. And look at California, how real estate went up. And then new hotspot, Texas.
Right.
Dallas. Look at Dallas now. All the younger people have moved to Dallas. And how real estate has gone up there. And how malls are thriving, small businesses are thriving, everything. So it's just a no-brainer that, that H-1Bs bring money into the country. They pay taxes. Their family comes, they spend, they go on vacations. So they keep the economy moving and vibrant.
Nice. Thank you so much, Prashanti. A lot of, insight from you. And of course, a strong voice should go as a message to educate American population at large that the non-immigrant visa holders who are working here, high-skilled workers, are adding to the economy of this nation. They will make the country more stronger with their innovation, with their, expertise and the experience that they carry. And of course, there are a lot of talents, big talent is produced through them. They are the talent resource pool, in terms of technology talent.
Let's talk about healthcare and let's talk about researchers and doctors.
Absolutely. Right? So doctors will pretty much have a new
scientists, everyone.
Yes, and
that's how America became the country that it is, because they got the best talent from everywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
They fostered the talent from everywhere in the world and they brought them here.
In my forthcoming session with you, Prashanti, we'll talk about the immigrants, aspiring immigrants, and those who are stuck in the green card backlog, and the ways around for them to be able to be here in this country. We need more insight if there are any legal parameters that can be pursued to, have access to the unused visa numbers or something. Of course, there is a new news that was coming that there is a bill that is being proposed in the Senate about healthcare workers, so that some unused visa numbers can be given. We will talk about this in the next session because this will be a whole big discussion all over, and we need insight from legal experts from that. Thank you for your time today. And Prashanti, before we leave, please give a little bit more information about your law firm one more time. I mean, I read it as per, you have a very decorated profile, but as far as the business offices that you have and how you practice and how people can reach out to you from all throughout the US. I mean, I think you are an immigration attorney. You don't need any barriers, that you can practice anywhere, right? So little insight before we leave.
So thank you for the opportunity, Jyotsna. My name is Prashanti Reddy. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been an immigration attorney since 1997. So yeah, I've been around for a while. And my offices are in Midtown Manhattan, very close to Penn Station. So I mainly practice business immigration. That's my specialization. And so, H's, L's, O's are something that people often forget about, and they can be used as an alternative to H1s sometimes. So yeah, so H's, O's, L's, P's, which are performer visas. So, again, and family-based, of course, family-based immigration. So we do all that. And I've always been very close to my community, and because obviously I'm a member of the community. And I came myself being an immigrant, and I came on a student visa, and I went to law school here. So, I mean, I have been through the same process that most of you have been through and are going through right now. So I have an understanding of, what it means to be a non-immigrant, and then your journey towards becoming an immigrant. So, yeah, so I feel for you. So, because I know I've been through that process myself. But if anyone needs to reach out to me, they can. My website is www.readyesq.com. My email is prashanti@readyesq.com. So we'll be happy to take, I would be happy to answer emails actually. We usually charge, but if you just say that you were on this show with Jyotsna Sharma, I'll be happy to, answer your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your valuable time and educating the immigrant community. Thank you so much, Prashanti, and we appreciate your time, and we wish you all the very best for great things you're doing. Keep nurturing us with the right information and the rights that we can have, by being in this country, and we need leaders like you there. And we will definitely have more sessions with you, Prashanti, on different topics. Of course, O visa is something very important. I would like to discuss in details with that perspective, as well, when we speak about permanent residency in the country. So thanks for your time today, and it was great session with you. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Jyotsna. Take care.
Thank you so much. And to my viewers, this was a very, very informative session. Thanks to Prashanti Reddy, an excellent immigration attorney, and has been very vocal for the immigrant communities in USA. We will come back with very, very more, we will come back with more informative sessions in the future. And as far as your permanent residency is concerned, we will explore more topics on that as well in the forthcoming sessions. Till then, stay home, stay safe, and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prashanti.
Thank you.
मेरे महबूब कयामत हो